Here's Brody Brazil.
You know, there's definitely a stereotype and even a trap that so many American sports fans fall right into, myself included, where we have such a narrow view of sports from a continental perspective. Like here in the United States, football is king. I know that, I realize that, but do we ever think about sports globally? What's popular? What's growing at a super quick rate? F1 is right there in that conversation. Between Europe and Asia, and now growing here in the United States with a younger demographic and a female demographic, Formula One is getting quite popular, and now, with their new deal just struck with Apple TV, that might accelerate the growth of F1 here in the United States. It's about a $700 million deal reported between Apple and F1 to carry these rights into the 2030s, a 5-year partnership, and that means that F1 is leaving more of a traditional broadcast platform like ESPN, and sometimes they were on ABC, but they are making the shift to streaming only. Now, what does this mean? If you're currently an Apple TV subscriber, you will get all practice sessions and qualifying sessions and sprint sessions and Grand Prix, all of that available to existing subscribers. But Apple TV is going to take it even a step further by offering select practice sessions and races, which will be free to everyone. Now, I assume there's a lot of people who already have the Apple TV subscription. Not everybody, to be clear, but enough people to make that a widespread platform already. The fact that they're offering it to everybody, which means everybody with an iPhone has no excuse. They can easily click into those select practices and races. So they got to be careful, and they have to take advantage about when they open up that free door. More on that in just a second. But all of this kind of follows the hype of racing in general on the Apple platform because they put out the movie F1 the movie, which, by the way, I never even realized was the highest grossing sports movie of all time. So don't think that that success had nothing to do with this deal and the interest and the collaboration between Apple and F1. Certainly that got a lot of attention, and that may have sparked initial conversations here. The bonus part, though, is what Apple is going to do for F1, that if I'm MLS, by the way, who's got their own separate deal, they've got a 10-year rights deal, which is the subject of many conversations right now. How's it going? How could it be better? What could Apple do to help boost MLS? Here's what F1 is going to get from Apple as a company. Apple, and this is in their own words, will amplify the sport across Apple News, Apple Maps. How will they do that in Apple Maps? Apple Music, I guess they can play certain tracks and soundtracks that correlate to F1, and Apple Fitness Plus. Maybe like a workout for potential drivers. Apple Sports, the free app for iPhone, will feature live updates for every qualifying sprint and race for each Grand Prix across the season with real-time leaderboards, season driver and constructor standings, live activities to follow on the lock screen, and a designated widget for the iPhone home screen. So again, as much as the broadcast package is part of this for Apple TV subscribers, like I'm a subscriber already, just on Ted Lasso alone, and that hasn't been out for several years now. I think it's coming back pretty soon. Apple TV does fantastic productions with their shows and their movies, and I think they do a great job with sports. They're departing Major League Baseball. They used to have the Friday night package up until this past season. I thought all of those presentations and productions were excellent. More on that in just a second and how they can take that experience and apply it to F1. But the point is, they're doing all the typical broadcast stuff. But now Apple is offering this to F1 as well. And if you really are looking to expand your audience, the casual racing fan, somebody who doesn't know much about it, and all of a sudden they see something on Apple News, and then there's the link to watch the broadcast right on their phone, or whatever it is going to be in Apple Maps that correlates to F1, all of these are just other ways that fans can find F1 if they've never been exposed to it before. But F1 was already doing pretty well ratings-wise as it relates to their broadcasts on ESPN. Now, I just want to point out, this is only the United States version of the broadcasts. So globally, there is a much better rating and a much better reach for F1. It's still on the incline here in the United States. F1 and their ratings through September of 2025 garnered 1.4 million viewers per race. Again, only here in the United States. We know the typical football game, the typical NFL game here in the States is like 10 times that, 15 times that on a regular basis. But this is good. This is a growing number for F1. It surpasses the 2022 season, where they saw on average 1.21 million viewers per race throughout that 2022 season. And again, all of that's on ESPN. Will it change with the shift to the Apple platform? Essentially, because you're going from a channel like ESPN, which a lot of people have, and they've been ingrained in using, like there's a habit of just tuning into ESPN if maybe nothing else is on. Will fans still find F1 now that they're going to Apple? Here's what F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali told Front Office Sports. Quote, "Our duty is to look into the future and try to make sure F1 can have the right platform for developing our growth. I really want to thank ESPN for what they did because they invested in us when no one was really ready to invest in us many, many years ago. But now is the time to look forward." So again, F1 is doing quite well globally. It's not do or die for them across the world. This is just their United States audience, where they realize a lot of people have phones. A lot of people are on their phones. A lot of people already subscribe to Apple TV. This is not necessarily like MLS, where the United States is their home base and they haven't even fully established to their growth potential here yet. This is F1 just trying to really key in on a United States audience through Apple. Here's what I think Apple can do for F1. Number one is bring that top-notch, top-tier production and presentation to racing that U.S. viewers haven't really seen. And what I mean by that is simply the quality of a 4K production like we saw with the Major League Baseball broadcast, or stats or analytics, or the multi-stream effect of watching an F1 race. How about if I'm watching the main view? What if Apple gave me the opportunity to watch cameras from different drivers' cars? They have this technology. They really never had the platform to implement this, though certainly ESPN wasn't able to do this like Apple can. What if I pick my 5 favorite drivers and the main broadcast? I can do a multi-view, or maybe like 3 favorite drivers and the national or the big feed in one corner and all 3 drivers' cameras on the other side. Or what if I want to hear the audio from the cockpit of a car to the race crew, or telemetry of how fast they're going, the G-load, anything that I can get extra on the screen? What if I want all that, or what if I don't? It seems like you'll have that flexibility, not to mention additional programming that Apple's going to do to the highest quality. So all of this is adding something new that I think is going to entice somebody like me who's mildly interested in watching an F1 race. But if you do it up different, if you do it up right, I think you might attach me a little bit more. I also think that Apple's going to be able to expose potential race fans to racing through their phones. And again, through the Apple News app, or the Fitness app, or the Apple Music app. Like just small little ways to take somebody who otherwise wasn't thinking about F1 on a random Wednesday afternoon and say, oh, wait, what's that? I'll click on that. I'll tap on that and see where it leads me. Apple has this platform, has this ability. Now, again, if I'm MLS, I'm saying, hey, can we get some of that too as part of our deal? Can we put all the MLS scores on that same style app? Can we amplify, in your words, can we amplify what you're doing for us? I do think that Apple's involvement is probably going to boost F1's profile here in the United States by some percentage. Now, it's already going and growing to a large degree. They say that F1 is the largest growing global sport around the world. I could believe that. I'm not 100% certain of that, but I could believe that. But the point is here, you have to realize what Apple's going to do is not going to triple the amount of F1 viewers. But if they can keep that trajectory going, I do think this is a better off place for them than ESPN. Look, ESPN deals with the NFL. They've got the NBA here in the United States. They're out of baseball right now. Technically, I think they might be jumping back in pretty soon on a regional level. ESPN's a pretty busy place. For F1 to jump in with Apple like this and kind of really only key in on the United States market, I think that might do well for them. Again, they're established in other places. This is only about the U.S. But I really think what's going to be important for them is to make these free events widespread and publicized and valuable, right? Because some people don't subscribe to Apple TV. This is what you're trying to get them to do. Subscribe to Apple TV. And not only when you subscribe, you'll get F1, but you'll also get every other thing and show and movie that Apple TV provides. So they're just trying to get you in the ecosystem. I do think that the ability to grow F1 is important to the racing community. And I do think Apple can do that to a certain degree, but let's not expect a double-digit jump or a 25% jump. And by the way, Apple's already said they're not going to announce ratings or viewership. They're going to keep a lot of that internal. So we won't actually really know the success of this, if ever, other than the eye test. Is it going? Is it growing? Are more people talking about and watching F1 here in the United States? I think it's a good deal. I know people will say, well, what about MLS? And people question that deal with Apple. I just think this is an apples and oranges scenario. And in this case, it might work out better for F1 than it has so far with MLS and Apple. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, thumbs up while you're down there helps me, this video, and this channel. And don't forget to subscribe. I would definitely love to see you back here next time.